We can speak to the former Conservative Cabinet Minister Ken Clarke, who joins us now from Westminster. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. Are you surprised Mr Cameron, having said he wanted to stay on as an MP, now has changed his mind and wants to go?
Well, I'm surprised because he had previously said that he was going to stay on. But I'm rather disappointed because, firstly, Cameron was a delightful man to work with when he was Prime Minister. He's a very bright, very good, public-spirited man. And I think the House of Commons is weaker when former Prime Ministers like him no longer contribute to its work. So I regret him going, and I wish him well. He obviously decided he's young enough to have a different interests in life, and we'll miss him when he's gone.
People are already reading between the lines, inevitably, and wondering whether this is because he's not happy with some of what Theresa May is doing, reviewing the policy on Hinkley Point, for example, the grammar school policy, selection in education, which goes against what he was trying to do in government. Do you think that is it, that he opposes some of the things she's doing and he doesn't want to oppose it on the backbenches?
Well, with great respect, I think anybody trying to read between the lines like that has no more idea than I or you do whether there's anything in that. I think it's highly unlikely. It's perfectly possible to sometimes still disagree with your successor, but you have to accept that your successor will do some things differently from what you would have done. And I think David would have been extremely constructive if he'd stayed. Now, I don't think there's any point in trying to read some great, deep political significance in all this. I think David has just thought about his position. He's obviously disappointed, and my guess is that he's decided that he's going to have a complete break, and he's so young that he's going to embark on a wholly different new phase of his career. I hope it still contains plenty of time for contributing to the political debate.
But surely when he says he doesn't want to be a distraction and a diversion, that is code in a way, isn't it, for saying that he doesn't want to be opposing Theresa May in Parliament? Because if he agreed 100% with everything she was doing, how would that be a distraction or a diversion?
No, it's code for the fact that every journalist will constantly spend their time trying to demonstrate that he disagrees with her if he carries on. All right.
Tell us, how will he be remembered? I was just talking to Craig Oliver, his former Director of Communications, of course. How do you think he will go down in the history books? Angela Eagle was saying we shouldn't be paying tribute to him because she didn't think he was a good Prime Minister. He took us out of Europe.
Well, I think he's going to suffer the same misfortune as Tony Blair. They were both outstandingly able men, very popular people at their prime, very successful Prime Ministers. Tony's legacy is he's the man who made the terrible mistake of taking us into the Iraq War. I'm a friend of David, so I regret to say I think for history his legacy will be he's the man who accidentally caused Britain to leave the European Union. There's no getting away from the fact that that will overshadow every other feature of his premiership, which is a pity. If he hadn't had this referendum, if he hadn't had this idea of managing the party by having a referendum, then he would have been able to deliver his legacy. He was actually doing a lot of work on meritocracy, social mobility, improving our society. Big achievements have been made in quite a lot of areas when he was Prime Minister, and the whole thing was brought abruptly to an end by an absurd, rather low-level referendum campaign, and the outcome is produced.
But again, Sir Craig Oliver was saying it would be naive to think it wasn't inevitable that there had to be a referendum on Europe at some stage.
Well, we've never had referendums in our constitution until very recently. We've only had them in response to popular demand from the right-wing press or from normally right-wing pressure groups, they've only had them usually. Harold Wilson's was the same, because it was thought at the time by the Prime Minister and some of his entourage this was a useful way of handling problems of party discipline and party control in our broad-based political parties. No, there was nothing inevitable about it at all. It was a sudden decision that perhaps we'd have a quieter time in the last Parliament of the coalition government, and perhaps we'd get people to stop going on about Europe for a bit if we promised a referendum in 2 or 3 years' time. Unfortunately, the chickens all came home to roost.
Just on this idea of Prime Ministers leaving the stage altogether once they leave Downing Street, I mean, Prime Ministers tend not to hang around in the House of Commons very long after they've left Downing Street. Is that a bad thing? Would you think that the House needs their experience?
Well, I'm biased because I don't think enough ex-ministers hang around as long as they used to. You do need the balance between experience, people who've actually had to tackle the problems of government on the one hand, and all the new enthusiasts with new ideas coming in on the other. Callaghan stayed around for a parliament. Ted He stayed on forever, but he was thoroughly unhelpful to his successors, I will have to admit. I think Parliament will benefit from, firstly, David's intelligence, his strong political views, his insights, and the experience he undoubtedly acquired when he very strongly led first a coalition government and then a Conservative government for a good long time.
Ken Clarke, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much.